Hello all, welcome back to Career Launcher. As a part of our 45 Days to CAT series that we had started, in which we have been releasing daily videos at 9 p.m. for practice, ranging across the topics of DILR, Quant and VARC, using the questions that have appeared in our mocks. In this particular video, with only 31 days to CAT, you'll see Gejo help you answer a question that is based on history, an RC passage that is based on history that appeared in Countdown CAT 8.
So let's look at passage number 1. It had 5 questions, 517 words, and a grade level of 16.0, and this was taken from a book. So this would have a little dense to read, but I believe that once you get past the passage, if you can understand what is given in the passage, and I'm sure that you can solve the questions pretty, should I say easily? I'm going to use the word easily. Let's give it a go. When Hegel may not have been the first philosopher to write about history, he was the first historicist philosopher, whatever that means. So now obviously, thankfully, there is an exclamation given. So he may not be the first philosopher to write history, but what is the point that is being made here? He is the first historicist philosopher. Let's understand what that means. That is a philosopher who believed in the essential historical relativity of truth. Hegel maintained that all human consciousness was limited by a particular social and cultural conditions of man's surrounding environment. Past thought was not true absolutely or objectively, but only relative to the historical and cultural horizon within which the person lived. Human history must therefore be seen not only as a succession of different civilizations, but more importantly, a succession of different forms of consciousness. So, a few things to unpack. One thing that is, of course, mentioned here is the fact that this Hegel is the historicist philosopher. Let's call it HP, and it's talking about everything is about relative. The truth is relative. Truth is in the context of the time, right? Whatever historical truth exists, it is not absolute truth. It is in context to that particular time's culture and social condition. And the key thing that is mentioned here is that therefore human history must therefore be not only seen as a succession of different civilization, but more important, succession of different form of consciousness. History is a movement of different form of consciousness. That is what is mentioned in paragraph number 1. Let's look at paragraph number 2. Consciousness. Now it's getting focused in terms of consciousness. The way in which human beings think about fundamental questions of right and wrong, the activities they find satisfying, their beliefs about God, even the way in which they perceive the world has changed fundamentally over time. And since these perspectives are mutually contradictory, it follows that the vast majority of them were wrong, or the form of false consciousness, to be unmasked by subsequent history. The world's great religion, according to Hegel, was not true in themselves, but were ideology which arose out of particular historical needs of the people who believed in them. Christianity in particular was an ideology that grew out of slavery and whose proclamation of universal equality served the interests of the slaves in their own liberation. So now the entire paragraph is focused on this idea of consciousness, and so every particular period of history has a certain consciousness, and that is part of that history. Now this consciousness may itself be false, but which was corrected by sort of the next set of consciousness, right? But even if it's false, it was needed for that particular time, for that period. It was needed for some reason, that it existed because it was ideology which had a particular historical need. That's what he's saying. That those ideology at that point in time needed something. Okay, interesting. The radical nature of Hegelian historicism is hard to perceive today because it is so much a part of our own intellectual horizon. We assume that there is historical perspectivism to thought and share a general prejudice against the ways of thinking that are not up to date. Historicism is implicit in the position of the contemporary feminists who regarded mothers or grandmothers' devotion to family and home are a quiet holdover from an earlier age. Much as a progenitor's voluntary submission to a male's dominant culture might have been right for a time and may even have made her happy, it is no longer acceptable and considered a form of false consciousness. Historicism is also implicit in the attitude of a black who denies that it is possible for a white person to ever understand what it means to be black. For though the consciousness of blacks and white are not necessarily separated by historical time, they are held to be separated by a horizon of culture and experience within which each was nurtured and across which there is only the most limited of communication. If there is one paragraph which would have troubled you, maybe here, but this is author is sort of explaining this in little depth. So what is being told here, as I understand, is that there is. So we assume that there is something known as perspectivism in let's say the old concept perspectivism, because it is not up to date. But that's not what he's saying. So he's taken the example of a contemporary feminist who says that look, what women did during that time is what women did during that time, made her happy at that time. But now it's different. That's a false consciousness. It is not correct for our culture today. It also says that black and white, even they lived together, but the consciousness were different. Their cultural experience were different. So a white man cannot probably experience what it means to be black because he has not had that experience and consciousness. So history is a set of these consciousness and different consciousness, and once upon a time sort of a new consciousness arises, the old one becomes false. The radicalness of Hegel's historicism evident in his very concept of man. With one important exception, virtually every philosopher writing before Hegel believed that there is such a thing as human nature. That is a more or less permanent set of traits. So that is human nature. We do stuff because of our nature. This philosophical view is reflected in the common cliche that human nature never changes, used in the context of less attractive human characteristics like greed, lust, or cruelty. Hegel, by contrast, did not deny that man had a natural side arising from needs of body like food or sheep, but believed that his most essential characteristics, man was undetermined and therefore free to care his own strategy. So he's got okay, human nature, there are certain things about human nature, but it is not everything. We can create our own nature. We can create our thing. Let's say if you think that is your human nature, you don't understand reading comprehension passage. No, Hegel says no. My God, Hegel says no. Hegel is saying you can create your own nature. If I look at this particular passage, it is a nice read. It is very important that when you read the passage, you get involved in the passage. And if at all you're taking notes like these, which I'm going to call my doodling. First of all, you don't write too many stuff. It's just about for example, in one paragraph, the maximum thing that you're going to write is 4 words. Just about 4 words, nothing more. Okay, and also these notes are not written for reference. You're not answering the question to referring to the notes. That's not the purpose of doodling. The purpose of doodling is that if there are some tough passages, it forces sort of your comprehension. Yes, it slows down your pace a little bit, but not too much. I'm saying that if you write it by the side, if it becomes a habit, it doesn't take too much of time. Actually, it doesn't. You can actually do everything, all of these in about 5 minute tops, right? But what it definitely does is help you comprehend this. But look at the structure or the organization or the logical structure of what the passage is saying. Passage start by talking about historicist philosopher and gives the concept of this history is about succession of consciousness, and or they say that the new whatever the consciousness for a particular period of time is correct for that particular period it is based on the historical need of that time. But then once a new stuff comes, a new side of culture comes, the old is now a false consciousness. And our consciousness today may be false. Somebody may correct correcting in the future. An author has given a couple of examples, said that it's not perspectivism. The suggested example feminist in terms of how their consciousness evolved. The example of black and white having two very different consciousness, even they live together, the experiences are different. And then they say that human nature is not everything. Human can create their own nature. This is what the passage is. Let's look at the question. Question number 1, what you see, this percentage are the percentage of people who mark the answer choice. In case you are checking, that's all that means. It usually helps because it helps me as a teacher to understand what is the kind of traps that people are falling into. This is marked by considerable chunk of people, which is the right answer choice. The radicalness of Hegel's historicism is best summarized in which of the following. So this is the last paragraph. Last paragraph is about human nature, and his perspective is very clearly that the most essential character is man was undetermined and therefore is free to create his own nature. Man can create his own nature, and that's what you want to pick up. This is also given in last paragraph. Once you understand what is given in last paragraph, you know what is given in last paragraph. It's about human nature, right? So you have this one. Hegel believed that the essential aspect of human nature are moldable. Moldable is a good word. Are free to create his own nature. So you can mold your nature. The essential characteristics was undetermined and therefore moldable. There is this perfect, and I don't know, this would have been a pick me answer choice for many. You just look at the answer choice and say, I want to mark it. But I don't know why you fell for answer choice 1, 2, and 3. Let's give it a go. Hegel believed that humans have a natural side arising from the needs of the body. Okay, so this is but this does not explain the radicalness of it, no? So this is something that is true, arising did not deny the natural side, but the key thing is this word after but. This is true, but not the answer. When I say it's true, it's a true statement. Hegel definitely believes there's a natural side, there's a human nature to it. But the question is asking about what is the radicalness about it. The radical is the fact that his belief was very different from the philosophers who wrote before him. Every philosopher said that there is human nature alone. Hegel was the one who said, no, look, we can mold our nature. That was his radicalness. Hegel believed that the essentiality of human nature comprising has a permanent set of traits. Suicide! Oh my, Hegel will commit suicide. What is this? What? Hegel believed that human nature was transient in its essential form. Lasting only for a short time. Impermanent. So this is basically saying that it's temporary. Human nature is temporary. Yeah. Whatever nature that you have now is temporary. Tomorrow will be different. It is not saying that it is transient. It's transit, not suggesting that it's temporary. You're merely saying that we can mold it, and we can mold it and make it permanent. Who knows? We can create our own nature. That nature, he never suggests that it's transient. But I'm guessing. At least some of the 16% of you would have marked this because you looked at the answer choice and said, transient. I like it. I want to mark it. Do you know the meaning of transient? But why are you marking it? See, normally, such a kind of words come now. That is usually the answer. I've seen it. This was a clean question, ladies and gentlemen. Let's look at question number 2 here. False consciousness in the context of the passage. Understand what the passage is saying. So you've got this conscious 1, it moved to conscious 2, in the conscious 3. That's how history is. And a particular false consciousness is something that was corrected by the future sort of consciousness. So this would be the answer. Perception about world and fundamental questions proven wrong by subsequent history. Something that was proven wrong by subsequent history. That's what false consciousness is. I think somewhere here it's mentioned. Where is it? False consciousness. And since these perspectives were mutually contradictory, it follows the vast majority of them were wrong or forms of false consciousness. Well, that is the whole thing. Vast majority of them were wrong, and these are the forms of themselves. So it said, but ideology which arose out of particular historical needs of people who believe in them. He's saying that so that's the whole thing. So the beliefs changed over time. I think somewhere he has mentioned. Okay. It was for a time, even when happy, no longer acceptable, considered the form of false consciousness. Something was corrected later. That's false consciousness. This makes sense. Perception about the world and fundamental questions proven wrong by subsequent history. That is for false consciousness. Let's look at other answer choices and see what is wrong with them. 11% if we went for this. False ideologies about religion. Just religion, too narrow. False consciousness is just about religion. It's about anything. It's not just about religion. This is too narrow as an answer. False consciousness does not necessarily refer only to religion. This is wrong. Mutually contradictory perspective or consciousness held by conflicting humans. What is this? one human being, another human being is fighting. That's 21% of conflict in humans. I think what you would have done is you would have probably picked the word here, mutually contradictory. Since these perspectives are, what perspectives are mutually contradictory? Saying consciousness is, in a way, human beings think about fundamental questions of right and wrong. The activities they find satisfied, beliefs about God, human ways to perceive the world, has fundamentally changes over time. So conscious number 1 and later conscious 2 and conscious 3 as different part of history. These are mutually contradictory. These are different. So one view that we held at one point in time, those were different. And why was it different? There was a certain correction that was made in later history or later consciousness, which made the original consciousness false. So it is not that this false consciousness is mutually contradictory perspective. It is not like false consciousness, one false, they are mutually respective. It means that they are mutually contradictory to a new view. That's all. So this is wrong. The fundamental changes that have taken place over time, over idea of consciousness. Which passage are you reading? This is clean. So if you understood what is going on here, I'm sure that I think what is probably going on is that people read the passage because they just want to solve the question. That's the attitude. You should read the passage because you want to comprehend the passage. Once you comprehend the passage, all these questions are nailable. Question number 3. Oh, this is one question where you have fight. We've got quite a lot of fight. So we have, ladies and gentlemen, evil question creator here. We have got evil question creator. We have a Lucifer season 3. I think season 5, 6 may be happening. The author points out contemporary feminist. Okay. So the contemporary feminist. Let's look at what the author is talking about. Contemporary feminist. Historicism is implicit in the position of contemporary who regards a mother or grandmother as devotion to whole and old age. The radical Hegelian historicism is too hard to perceive today because it is so much a part of intellectual horizon. We assume that an historical perspectivism to thought and share a general prejudice against way we thinking are not up to date. So we have a certain perspective about certain things, history, they are not up to date, right? Like feminists were saying, there's nothing up to date. We have to change it. We need to have a new culture. So this answer choice number 1 is saying Hegelian historicism is in alignment with our own historical perspectivism. Alright, so this is sort of, I know that this is sort of difficult to pick. I understand this. That this is what is being meant here. Let's read that again. It says the radical nature of Hegelian historicism is hard to perceive today. This radical nature of it we can't perceive today because it is so much part of intellectual horizon. We assume that there is historical perspectivism to thought and share a general prejudice against ways of thinking that are not up to date. So we have a general prejudice against ways of thinking that was old. So we don't follow the old. Historicism is implicit in the position of contemporary feminists who regards a mother or grandmother devotion to family, home as a coin held over from an earlier age. Much as the progenitor's voluntary submission of male-dominant culture might have been right at a time, it made her happy. It is no longer acceptable and constitute a form of false consciousness. So it is one sense that whatever is that perspectives that we have, the historical perspective they have, it is very similar to sort of Hegelian historicism. So for example, like the contemporary feminist does not like what has happened in the past. True for the past, but not relevant today. That's the same thing that Hegelian historicism is saying. So you have got consciousness of the past, which is currently false consciousness. So this is the thing. I think that what would have been needed in this particular answer choice is to do ditch me's. Hegelian historicism was ahead of its time. And revolutionize the current intellectual horizon. Where is it mentioned? There's nothing of this mentioned. It is revolutionized current. No, it is not ahead of its time. It's revolution the current. No, nothing of this. This is alien to the conversation. We share a general prejudice against Hegelian historicism. We don't share a general prejudice against ways of thinking, not against Hegel. This is wrong. Historicism is a concept is implicit in all. I don't think it is mentioned that it is there in all modern day perspective. Every single modern day perspective, historicism is implicit. Historicism is implicit in the position of the contemporary feminist. I don't think that the author wants to say that it is implicit in every single thing. All is too much. For all to be correct, the passage has to clearly mention that it's applicable to every goddamn single thing, something very universal, which is not mentioned. So I think the way in which you can get to this answer choice is by ditching it. I don't know why 35% if when the word all is there, went and hit the word all. I don't see all. Do I see all? Historicism also implies an attitude of black who denies for through consciousness. Nothing is mentioned. Where is mentioned is all. Modern day perspective. Where is a modern day perspective? Every single perspective. All that is saying the radical nature of Hegelian historicism is hard to perceive today. We are not able to. So the radical nature is hard. Okay. All right, let me understand this. There's a radical nature of Hegelian historicism, which means the fact that something was radical. It was Hegel was the first guy to talk about this historicism. So we today don't consider this is not radical. Come on. So because it is. It's so much into us. Well, we assume that historical perspectivism is thought share a general precedence against ways of thinking that are not up to date. It's in us. So we don't consider them to be radical, right? But the author is saying that look, the contemporary feminist view is aligned to our perspectivism. So the Hegelian historicism and this historical perspectivism is more or less aligned. So let me actually check what is historical perspectivism. Is there anything? Historical perspectivism. Nah. The idea of historical relativity or truth is based on the belief. Okay, so this is clean. So why is that relative? I think this is mentioned in the first paragraph. Is relative because human consciousness is a product of society and culture it belongs to. That's what it is. That's what is mentioned. I think that's probably mentioned here. I'm also guessing this would have been a pick me. Rest of the answer choice would be, I don't think it will be wrong. Historical thought can never. Human beings are not always influenced by their surrounding. The differences in human consciousness amplified. Differences in human consciousness. I have human consciousness one. This is getting amplified. The difference is amplified by society. No, society is what creates that consciousness. The culture is what creates a consciousness. I believe that this is clean. Question number 5. The author makes all of the following arguments in the passage except. All right. First one. Hegel believed that religions were a product of historical needs of human in the given era. Perfect. Religions were a product of historical needs of the given era. That was need. Christianity was the need. Hegel was the first to bring historical perspective to the truth and consciousness. He was the first historical perspective to the truth and consciousness. This is the first philosopher. Historical relativity of truth. So it's fine. Hegel's historicism resonated with present day historical perspectivism. Yes, from the other answer choice we can correct this. Okay. So actually, if you've got this one, if you got this answer choice, you have gone back and it makes sense. Hegel implied that all human nature arising out of one civilization are essentially similar. No, all nature arising out of one civilization is essentially. Oh no, he has not said that. Obviously, it's quite the contrary. That human nature, we are free to create our own thing. So this will be answer to that question. So I believe that there might be a issue with question number 3 in terms of understanding. My own understanding when I read the first time is not this, but apparently it is that. So which is sort of okay. I think it's fine. Yeah, there you have passage number 1, ladies and gentlemen. All right, bye.